Hey, happy Monday. Hey, I'm excited to be here with you this morning. And thank you for spending your Monday morning with me. I'm honored to have you here with me. I always like starting off the Monday on a great note with high energy because I think that however we start something, that sets the tone for everything. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being here on a Monday. And it's interesting because this week I've been thinking a lot about the subject of bouncing back. And I had a lot of experience last week to really talk about this. So, have you ever had that time when you've had a setback, maybe you've slipped up with something, and you just can't seem to get up. You just can't seem to figure out a way to bounce back. Have you ever had that situation? Well, I know it happened with me this week. So there's a couple of different things. It all started, honestly, with some unexpected bills and some financial stress. Have you ever had that surprise bill come in that somehow either slipped your mind or maybe you've been avoiding it, whatever the case it is? Well, we had one of those. And honestly, ever since my son got sick, it seems to be a pretty regular occurrence. So I should be used to it by now, right? But we got this bill in. It was totally unexpected. Wasn't trying to figure out how to make everything work, and so naturally, I let it get me down. I let it wear on me. I started worrying about it. How am I going to make this work? And it affected my state. It affected my attitude. It affected how I showed up with my family and at work. And then it just started kind of snowballing, right? And for the first time in a long time, I got to admit, I skipped my morning routine and my workout. And this again started this like snowball effect. And I lost a lot of momentum this week on a number of different levels. And I felt really stuck. Have you ever felt like you're stuck? You have, one thing starts to slip and then it has this domino effect. And then eventually you get to this point where you just feel like you're stuck and you don't know how to move forward. So I felt stuck. And then I gotta admit, I felt like a failure because I'd broken my streak for my morning routine. I've been keeping this up for a very long time and I broke my streak. And I just felt, I felt like I had broken something. You ever felt like that? You do something really consistently over and over. Maybe you have a habit, maybe you have something that you do for someone, and then you slip up. And then the worst part is that you don't want to start up again because you feel like you let yourself down. You feel like you failed. You feel like you didn't keep your end of the bargain to yourself, right? So you start to get stuck. And that's one of the dangers of missing multiple things in a row is that you start to get into that a new habit starts to form basically, and you start to get into that new mindset. And so I was stuck for a lot longer than I should have been. But then I realized kind of in a flash that I had ultimately I'd only lost a fraction of the momentum that I thought I had. I'm still healthy, I'm still strong from my past dedication, from everything I had done up to that point for doing my morning routine and my workout. And I was still, it wasn't like I went from, I missed a couple of workouts and now I lost all that momentum from months and months of working out. So I realized I hadn't lost as much momentum as I thought I had. And, I know we're going to get through it with the finances. We always find a way, And so I realized, okay, I need to not let this bug me so much. So I decided, here's the thing. I need to put the past behind me and I need to move forward. And what I want you to do right now is I want you to write this down because it was something I heard years ago and it's really stuck with me. Your past does not equal your future. Let me say that again. Your past does not equal your future. Whatever you did in the past, that doesn't have to hold you back. That doesn't have to be an anchor that holds you down. In fact, I have a coach that says use your past as wind in your sails instead of an anchor that holds you back. So try not to get stuck in what you've done in the past. And I know it's easier said than done. Believe me, I know. But who you are does not have to be who you become. Who you've been does not have to be who you become. So your past does not equal your future. So then I got to thinking about, so how do we pull ourselves back up after a setback, especially, a bad one? And I started thinking about something that Tony Robbins says. And he says that there's three decisions that we make in every moment of our lives. And I think these three decisions are really the key to bouncing back. I think these three things that we always have access to, these three decisions are the key to whether we just sit back and let it happen to us, we become a victim, or we stand back up and we take the world head on. So the three decisions that we all have access to, the three decisions that we're constantly making in every moment of our lives. Number one, what are you focusing on? Here's the thing. We experience the life that we focus on. When you are focusing on whether you have plenty or whether you don't have enough, that's going to totally alter how you show up to the situation. Am I right? So if you think about all of the amazing things that have happened to get you to this point, you're going to have a much different outlook than I've got to this point and now I can't go further, right? So whatever you focus on is going to have a huge effect on you. Are you looking at this situation as a challenge, or are you looking for the solution? Are you looking for the blessing and the gratitude in the whole situation? Or are you just looking at, like I said, being a victim, or do you want to be the victor? So first is, what are you focusing on? The second is, what does it mean? The same thing, here's the crazy thing, the same thing could have totally different meaning to different people. So, you could look at it from, wow, look at how far you've come. Or you could look at it as, yeah, but that means that I have this much further to go, or whatever the case is. So meaning, you have two questions. What are you going to focus on, and what does it mean? What does that focus mean? What does the situation mean? And we can make up all kinds of different meanings. They're all in here. We can decide what it means. But you can also find meaning in building strength. You can find meaning in really digging into the process. It's like working out. A lot of times it's hard to work out. But when you find meaning in the strength that you've gained because of what you're doing, then everything changes. When you change the meaning, instead of, if you were running, a marathon, and there was literally no purpose to it. You're not going to get a medal at the end. You're not going to get recognition, nothing, right? You're just running a marathon just for the sake of running it. What would the point be, right? But if you're thinking the whole time you're running, at the end of this marathon, I'm going to get the recognition. I'm going to get the medal. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get bragging rights, right? Which is, I've never run a marathon, but that's an amazing accomplishment. So when you put meaning to the pain, it changes it. And the third thing, so we've got, what are you focusing on? We've got, what does it mean? And the third thing is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to freak out and let it derail you? Or are you going to step back and look for an opportunity to learn? That's one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn in my life, through my son getting sick, to, having this recent setback financially, and the falling off the bus of my morning routine, whatever it is. That's one of the most critical things you can learn is what are you going to focus on? What does it mean? And what are you going to do about it? So these three steps are critical. And I know it's funny to say that they're critical. They were just as critical with when my son got cancer as when, I had this financial stress and I needed to rebuild my momentum. It sounds funny, but they're the same process because you've lost some momentum and you got to pick yourself back up. The other thing to remember is that the more you go through, the more setbacks you have, the stronger you'll get. Each time you get back up, you'll get stronger. So keep that in mind. So they seem like two totally different things, but they're the same process. It's all about getting it back up. It's all about, what are you focusing on? What does it mean? And what are you going to do about it? What are you going to move forward with? I know this sounds so simplistic, but sometimes we get so stuck in our own heads, and simplicity is one of the biggest keys to momentum. That's another thing that Tony Robbins says, is that complexity is the enemy of execution. So it's the simpler it is, the easier it is to follow. So next time you're facing a setback, next time you get knocked down, next time you slip up, think about these 3 questions. What are you focusing on? What does it mean? And what are you going to do about it? Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for spending your Monday morning with me. And if you're interested in learning more about momentum, join me for my free webinar this Thursday. Just click the link in my bio. Thanks again for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.